Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the July 12th Wareham Board of Selectmen meeting. Before I have a roll call, may I have a motion, please, to have a clerk pro tem for the evening?
I make a motion to make Selectman Slavin clerk pro tem.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that motion.
Is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I will ask for your vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? 3-1-0. I will now entertain a motion to go into executive session for reason number 6, please.
So made.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to go into executive session for reason number 6, which has to do with land disposition agreement for the Tremont Nail Factory. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? We are in executive session. I'm going to ask you to leave the room, please, ma'am. Oh, yeah, sure. Thank you. Can you lock the door after? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to call this meeting back to order. I'm going to instruct you to make sure you have a mask on, and if you have a telephone with you, shut it off and put it back in your pocketbook. Thank you. I will now call this meeting to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Good evening. Present today is...
You know.
Again. Selectman Bessie, Selectman Chadwick, Selectman Whiteside, Selectman Slavin, Selectman Wertz is not available today, and Town Council Richard Bowen.
Excellent. Excuse me. We can hear everything you say, guys, ladies and gentlemen. Please don't. Mr. Salerno, May I have you say the Pledge of Allegiance? Mr. Salerno, could you say the Pledge of Allegiance? Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. Announcements. Mr. Bessie, do you have any announcements, sir?
None tonight, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chadwick?
Yes, I have a couple. First is Wednesday, July 13th at 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the Little Harbor Country Club will be the Cranberry Country DGA presents disc golf at the harbor. Fee is $35. You can register online, and you can find them on Facebook. Next, I have fifth quarter athletics. Free football camp is going on.
Excuse me. If I really do not want the audience talking, please. Thank you very much. Sorry.
That's fine. Fifth quarter athletics football camp is going on right now. It is free for all kids from ages 5 to 15, and it's going on at the Palmer Field, and that's for both boys and girls. Last one is a little lengthy here. So last weekend, Lady Sting, am I getting that right?
Yes.
Lady Sting, girls softball, played 5 games and only let up 1 run and scored a total of 32 to win the Rebellion Summer Invitational. This past weekend was the way to end the season. 6 games, total of 60 runs brought in, and only 13 runs scored against them. Incredible games to everyone that went. The last game was a tough one, representing in Lake George, New York, to win the 12U Summer Blast softball tournament. They planned. They last with it is they are offering summer tryouts right now on Wednesdays. Wednesday, August 3rd, 6 to 8. You need to register on their website. And that's it. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Slavin, do you have announcements, sir?
Yes, thank you. First off, the roads in Wareham are becoming a problem as far as the sewer manhole covers and the what we call the small round covers for controlling the water and the water pipe system. They're sinking into the ground. If you drive down Main Street, depending what kind of car you have, a lot of the newer cars now have 18 to 20-inch rims with tire sizes that are like 30 or 35 side white walls, which are like that thick. And if you hit them, even at 25, 30 miles an hour, you can destroy a tire or destroy a rim. The new cars today, unfortunately, something like the one I have, if you destroy 2 tires and 2 rims hitting it on one side, you're out about $3,000. So I'm asking both the water department, which is a separate district from the town, and also the sewer commissioners to start to take a look at this. I think there's one in particular right in front of where Gone Country Ice Cream is and the restaurant. That thing looks like it's ready to collapse in. The hole is about that deep right now where it falls in like that. So we need to do something because we're going to end up, we have to pay as a town, you know, for anybody that damages their car because of road conditions, etc. I have an issue where someone actually hit one of the water units over by Swiss Beach Road. It flipped up as he went over it, and it destroyed 2 wheels, 2 tires. A little disturbed because the water department claimed they don't have insurance for it or they don't have to pay for it, and therefore you should go to your own insurance company. That's not going to fly, at least not with me anyways. So I just want to let everybody know that we have an issue. We need to look at it. That's number one. Number two, I just got an email, I'm not sure who from, saying we're not on TV. Mr. White says it shows what we are, but I'm not sure if 29 or 95 is not broadcasting properly. Again, that's beyond our control here, though. Bob knows about it. We'll see what happens. Next, we have a new building inspector, director who came in basically about a few weeks ago. I just want people to know that if you've been written up for violation, or if you have violations, the town of Wareham has been, I'm not going to say lax, but we've been difficult to get people to follow the rules and regulations. We've had people go 2 and 3 years before we get them into court. The new director is not playing games. Everybody should understand that. We've had 3 things in the last week and a half resolved. One of the most recent ones was people were set up over the Walmart parking lot with a trailer, motorhome, and everything else with stuff all over the ground. Walmart hadn't really done much. I made a phone call Thursday, and it's been resolved as of yesterday. And it's just one example, so this is not going to continue anymore. I know I get complaints constantly from people about yards having too many cars unregistered, different issues. We're going to try and get this cleaned up once and for all. Thank you on that. Last, I think we have is the COVID. BA4, BA5, which is prevalent now and very heavy in Europe, is coming into the United States in pretty big numbers. The illness is not life-threatening, but it is a serious issue. It's extremely contagious. I went on what we call the Hot Rod Power Tour 2.5 weeks ago. I had between 5,000 and 15,000 cars per section as we went through the tour. I even had COVID test kits with me just in case. One of the people with me complained that the air conditioning was causing him to have sniffles and a sore throat. Well, sure enough, we got back. His wife said, basically made him test himself, and he came down with COVID. So the other 2 people, myself and the other person, we had to sit there and wait. One got COVID 3 days later. I tested positive 8 days later. And for 2 weeks, I continued to test positive till I finally tested negative Saturday. I never had any symptoms or anything else, but for those first 5 days, if I hadn't tested, I could have given to other people. So please be careful. Please understand that it is out there. It's come back again. It's come back with 2 different variants, and it's highly contagious. Thank you.
Can I add
Yes,
on to
go
that
ahead.
real quick?
Yes, go ahead.
We are seeing a huge uptick with it in the public on the ambulance rescue side. So just to let everyone know, it is out there, coming back full swing.
Thanks. Okay, we are, unfortunately, we will be going back, or fortunately, we will be going back to remote meetings. I'm not willing to risk the health of everyone in this room, and I'm certainly not willing to risk the health of the individuals on this board. We can continue to do business as we've been doing business for the past 1.5 years on a remote basis. Second of all, this just has to do with the agenda. The 2 hearings for a liquor license are not being held tonight. The documentation for those hearings is not in place, so we will not be having those hearings. And I would remind you that the chair must recognize you in order to speak. So we do not have citizens' comments or residents' comments on the agenda, so it's nice to see you all. Welcome, and thank you for being with us. But we will not be hearing from you. Okay, Mr. Slavin, the next thing on the agenda would be, appointments and reappointments and interviews.
Okay, first,
And as we had done before, if it's a reappointment, we did not ask the individual to come. If it's a new appointment or somebody being moved up from an associate to a full member, then we have asked that individual to be here. Go ahead.
okay, first up is the reappointment of associate member for the Board of Health. These are reappointments. First one is Kathleen Waldron, and the other is Jean Connaughton. These are one-year appointments because they're associates.
So is that your motion?
My motion is to approve that.
Is there a second to the motion to approve both?
Second.
And their expiration date would be June 30th, 2023. Is there any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstaining? I would remind all of the people who are appointed that they must finish their certificate of the conflict of interest law, and you must also present us in the Board of Selectmen's office with your indication that you have read and understood the open meeting law before you can be sworn in. We will not release the paperwork until you provide the office with that. Next, please.
Okay,
Let me just skip down, because is Ms. Locurdo, are you here? Okay, why don't you come on up and let's do the other ones that Mr. Lester is not available, so we will be skipping over that one. So let's do the other
Sit down, please.
Yep. The Old Colony Elder Services.
Okay. Could you give us your name, please, so the public knows?
Oh, no, hang on, we're going to do her last. We're
Why
going
don't you
to,
let us sit down then?
no, she's right there.
Never mind, dear.
Go ahead. Do,
Okay. Next, we have Old Colony Elder Services, basically for Missy Disick, which is a reappointment for a term to expire June 30th, 2023, as a member to the Elder Services member of the Board of Directors. This is an organization that I think is in, if I remember right, in Brockton, and they have meetings, and every town that's involved with that has a member that actually has voting rights and brings the issues of their area to them.
correct. Is there a
Thank you
second to the
again
motion?
for stepping up.
Second.
Second to the motion. Is there any further discussion on the motion to reappoint Missy Zizik to the Old Colony Elder Services member to a term to expire June 30th, 2023? Hearing none. I will go for a vote, please. All those in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? It is unanimous. Thank you very much. Next, Mr. Lester is not available this evening.
Okay. Next up is Road Commissioners. I want to appoint Marie Gregg to the Road Commissioner for a term to expire June 30th, 2025.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you. Motion made and seconded to reappoint Ms. Grigg to a three-year term to expire June 30th, 2025. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, abstaining? It is unanimous. We're 4-0-0.
Okay.
And-
Next up, Wareham Cultural Council, a term to expire on June 30th, 2024, for Leslie Edwards Davis, reappointment.
Is that your motion?
That's my motion.
Is there a
Second.
second to the motion? Okay. Thank you. Is there any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the reappointment to a term to expire June 30th, 2024, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? It is unanimous. Thank you very much. Now, Ms. Licurdo, would you introduce yourself? Can you pull one of the mics toward you? I think if the green light is showing, it's on.
Oh, it's on now.
Okay, go ahead. Introduce yourself, please.
My name's Nicole Licurdo, and I live in Wareham, Massachusetts. I've been an associate member for a few months now with the Conservation Commission, and I wish to be made a full member.
Thank you. Do any of the members here have any questions of Ms. Licurdo?
Yes.
Mr. Bessie?
I have a couple. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Not too bad. So I just have a couple of questions because, obviously conservation is a big issue in this town, whether it's solar, whether it has to do with the wetlands, whatever it might be. So a couple of questions that I have for you is, have you had a chance at all to go over both the town bylaw for the wetlands and also the state regulations on wetlands?
I have.
You have. Anything out of what you've read kind of like stick out to you that is kind of like something we're seeing a lot of here in Wareham or anywhere? And have you had a chance to dig in on any of that, if you've seen anything that's kind of popped into your head?
I'm sort of seeing that one of the most popular things, it seems like, is docks is a big thing in Wareham a lot. That there's been a few things recently on the agenda that we've had to look at. I think that's one of the biggest things is all of the docks being put in. That's what I see the most of. I mean, everything else is sort of, I don't really know how to describe. Like most of it seems to be related to building docks or things like that, or retaining walls, that sort of stuff. But it seems to be mostly ocean.
So obviously we know that conservation is a tough committee to be on, and thank you for being willing to step up, because it takes a special sort of person to be able to sit through those meetings, because some of them can be really long, as having been a former member of the commission. But for me, I just want to make sure that you're comfortable in understanding the laws that are in front of you and the decisions that have to be made, and making those decisions not based on how we feel about a particular person or a particular project, but based on how both our bylaw reads and the state law reads. I know sometimes it might be difficult to do that, but my biggest concern is that you're ready, because you've only been an associate member for a couple months. I remember being there, and I remember making the decision to want to move up. It was a tough one, but I enjoyed it. But I just my biggest concern is that you're 100% ready. If you're not ready, I don't want you to just jump in and say, yes, just give it to me just because I want to have a vote. I want to make sure you're comfortable, because it's not easy. So if you're ready for it, I had the pleasure of sitting with you for several months before being elected to this board. So I just want to make sure you're 100% ready. So if you tell me you're good and you understand it and you've had a chance to read it, I would continue to read it, because one of those documents is 246 pages of wonderful reading. So if you're ready, I'll support it 100%, but just know that it's not always going to be easy, and sometimes it's going to be tough.
It is confusing at first, and I feel like now it's starting to make sense, and I'm able to look at a project when it comes in and actually understand what they're asking for. And in the beginning, that was very difficult to really know what any of that stuff meant. I think now, especially when I keep going back to the bylaws, I looked at them the first time, kind of sounded like a foreign language. Now, after sitting in on meetings and listening and having it presented, now it makes a lot more sense to me, and I'm slowly starting to log all of that stuff as memory of what the laws are and what you can and can't do. So I think now I am in a comfortable position where I can make a decision based on what the bylaws are and how the project affects the environment, which is really what we're here to do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All set, Mr. Bessie?
That's it.
Anybody else have any questions?
No, I just want to thank you. It's a difficult committee, and it's one of the committees in town. Unfortunately, people buy property on the waterfront, and they assume, which is a terrible word to use, that they have rights to the water in front of them. They can put a dock up and do whatever they want. And when they find out they bought property and they can't do what they want, the next thing they do is they sue the town of Wareham. So it's a committee where you get your name in the newspaper frequently. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No further discussion. I have a motion and a second. I will call for a vote then. All those in favor of appointing Nicole Licurdo as a full member of the Conservation Commission to a term to expire June 30th, 2023. Now, it looks like a short appointment, and the reason that is because you are filling an unexpired appointment that Mr. Bessie could no longer
Okay.
serve. Okay, so normally they are a longer appointment. I just want you to understand that in a year, presuming you survive and want to, re-up, then that would be something that you would have to do.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much. All those in favor of the appointment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining is unanimous. Thank you very much, Ms. Licurdo. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
being able to come to see us this evening. Okay, as I said, we have no hearing for NAP Liquors, either one of those, but I will hear the application from Stephen Curry for a one-day liquor license. On the bottom. No, right here.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
It's not bright enough for me. Okay, we have an application for Stephen Curry, which would be for the Redmond Hall. And this is for an event, their annual clam bake, which takes place Sunday, August 7th, from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m.
Okay,
My
just
motion.
for clarification, this actually is for Mr. Curry individually, because the Redmen already have a liquor license, but this is for the Grove
Correct.
for the annual clam bake. So this, you can't issue, that
Can't.
would be a change of premises. So this is a one-day liquor license, only beer and wine, and it is only to serve liquor, in that particular kind of liquor, in the Grove for that particular day. Is there any further discussion? May I have your motion then?
I did.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second that
Second.
motion.
Motion made and seconded, and I can tell you that the paperwork is all in order. All those... All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, it is unanimous. Thank you very much. We are now going to, I think we'll skip and go to the members of the Sewer Commission and their, you have your consultants with you this evening, Mr. Dunlop? Thank you. We're going to be skipping to item number 8A. It is an issue that has been roundly discussed, and we, at the Sewer Commissioner's request, have invited representatives to come and explain what it is that they have voted to do and why they have voted to do it. So I would ask those of you who are going to be making the presentation to have a seat, and thank you very much for joining us. And as soon as you're all set up, I'll ask you to introduce yourselves. Thank you.
Do we have to set up to the,
Yeah. Unless you want to email it.
just take a moment to...
No, go ahead, right.
Thank you.
We did get a copy of your presentation
Oh.
sent to us, hard copy, so thank you very much. We have a copy of it. I believe that we've been able to look at it, but the public should be aware of your decisions and how you got there. Thank you so much. Hey. Mr. Campana, do you want to sit there so that you have a mic? It's up to you.
I don't bite.
There may be questions that would be directed at you, sir, if you don't mind. Thank you. So obviously, in the press, I don't know, in the past 3 or 4 weeks or something, this is something that the moratorium is something that the commissioners have been discussing. They are a separately elected board, and so in order for them to come before us, we asked that they asked that if they could come here and make a presentation because they thought the public would be more likely to see the presentation here than at one of your own meetings. Thank you.
Small detail.
While you're doing that, I'm going to accept a motion to discuss and possibly vote to approve the opt-out and reduction fee applications for curbside billing in the amount of $698.75. May I have a motion?
Motion so made.
Second.
Thank you. Motion made and seconded. That documentation was all in your packet. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, thank you very much. You guys all set? Okay. Welcome to Wareham, and could you please introduce yourselves individually so that we have 3 new members, only 2 of them were able to make it tonight, but they have not met you before, I don't believe. Go ahead.
My name is Russ Kleekamp. I'm an engineer with the company GHD. We've been working with the Wareham Water Pollution Control Facility for maybe 7 or 8 years now.
Just hit the button on your mic.
One more time. My name's Russ Kleekamp. I'm an engineer with the company GHD. We've been working alongside the town's Water Pollution Control Division for roughly 7 or 8 years now, working on a lot of projects. And I'll let the others introduce themselves.
Sarah Greenberg, also with GHD.
Bob Drake with Beta Group.
And I'm Guy Campina with the Sewer Department.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we came before the board tonight to talk about the condition of the town sewer system. I'm sure that everyone is aware of the moratorium that has been recommended for the sewer department because we're basically at capacity with the treatment facility. So, what does all that mean? I'm going to turn it over to Sarah here. She's going to give a brief presentation about what the problem is, what some of the solutions and recommendations are. and then I'm sure we'll have some question and answer afterwards.
Yeah.
Sarah?
Great, thank you. So as Russ mentioned, we'll go through setting the stage for just doing a brief explanation of what's the existing conditions, what are we talking about, and then that leads us to the recommended priority projects to address these issues. Of course, what are the costs and funding mechanism, and why are we coming before you now, and why is now important? So, as we stand now, the town has currently overcommitted flows, and as we all know, there's a moratorium on new connections. And so the facility, the treatment facility, doesn't have capacity to, for additional flows to be brought on. So this moratorium has been put in place in order to prevent that, so that more flows are not discharged to the river as we are at that capacity at the facility.
Real quick, just for the new members on the board, when we say the discharge to the river, the way the treatment facility is set up right now, it's on Sandwich Road. It treats the wastewater that comes in, and it discharges it through an open pipe to the Agawam River right behind the facility. So when we say discharge, that's the actual, after we take all the pollutants out of the wastewater, it then gets discharged back into the river.
And if I may, Sarah, it's 1.56 million gallons per day.
Is your green button?
It says green, I
Yeah,
don't
okay.
know.
Can
Yeah.
you just bring it closer? Thanks.
It's 1.56 million gallons per day is allowed in the river. And when you get to 80%, it triggers a whole lot of mechanisms at the Department of Environmental Protection and the EPA, and we're better than 80%, just so you understand. So the river is our hang-up. We cannot put any more than we're presently putting into the Agawam River.
And whose license is that, please? Who issues that license?
That license is issued by the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency of the federal government.
All set, gentlemen? Okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Great. So yes, as Guy mentioned, so when the flows exceed 80% capacity of this permitted discharge, what that triggers with the regulatory agencies is the requirement to provide a plan of how you're going to address the future flows. And as was mentioned, the permitted flow of 1.56 MGD, 80% of that is 1.25. So our committed flows that have been tallied that have not been seen at the facility, but have been committed is 0.25. And we saw average annual flows of 1.03 MGD. So you can see that that total of 1.28 MGD is greater than the 80% permitted flows, 1.25. So if these flows are realized and actualized, it triggers requiring submitting a plan to the regulatory agencies of how the future flows will be taken into account. And I should just note that this committed flow that's listed here, the 0.25 MGD value does not include AD Makepeace and the Business Development Overlay District.
Before you continue, just so the public knows, and at least we know, AD Makepeace is basically filed to no longer do any development in that area. So that 500,000 gallons that we had basically guaranteed them, as far as I'm concerned, doesn't exist anymore.
Would they be willing to?
It doesn't matter, they file with it.
Excuse me, just let the presentation go forward, please, Mr. Slavin. Thank you very much. We'll have an opportunity for questions later on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the situation we're in now is we are overcommitted on flows at the facility in order to discharge out to the river.
1 second. Just one other quick thing to add. I know the first question might be, well, if we're at 80%, we're roughly 1.28 MGD. We still have a little bit left, right? We have 20% left. Unfortunately, we have to save that reserve for the I&I, the inflow and infiltration. The town has a lot of pipes that have aged. There's a lot of leaks, the Swifts Beach area. And that's why we built 2 additional line lagoons to bring in. And what I&I is the surplus flow when it rains. It's water that either comes into the sewer pipes through the ground, through manholes, through sump pumps. So we need to leave that reserve capacity for I&I. And going back to 2018, we know that one of the recommendations for the moratorium was that in 2018, we had 3 unregulated discharges. Basically, too much flow entered the plant, and then it surcharges. It floods the grounds of the plant. Because that conditions exists, and that was a year of extremely high water, we get much more I&I. where less rainfall, water table goes down, we tend to get less I&I, but if we have a very wet year leading into this, we could exceed what we saw in 2018. So it's very important that we leave a reserve buffer for I&I flows coming in. If we brought it right to the 1.56 of all residential flow, and then we didn't leave a buffer for I&I, that would not be recommended. Go ahead, sir.
So this brings us to, not only do we have, as we're calling capacity issues of needing to maintain this excess and keep our permitted flows at a certain level, the condition of the facility is also at a state where it is aging and equipment is aging. So we have so what are the projects, what are the recommendations that we have come before you to propose and recommend to help with these issues? So the 3 priority projects that were recommended, and I'll go into detail after. Swift Speech I&I to address some of, as Russ mentioned, inflow and infiltration in a region of the town where dealing with that I&I can help alleviate some of that capacity. And then at the WPCF, 2 projects to deal with the headworks area where all the wastewater first comes in, to upgrade that facility so that it can pull out all of your screenings and grit that it needs to at the beginning of the process, and then also your secondary clarifier recommend.
Okay, so pretend that we don't understand any one of those terms. Okay, so headwork upgrades and clarifiers, I think, I'm not trying to,
No.
I'll take a
If you
stab at it,
don't-
and I'll
go-
put it,
yeah.
I'll put it in language that I can understand, so that
Please.
makes it easier for everybody
Yep.
else. The headworks, we have 3 major pump stations: Depot Street, Hines and Onset, and we have Narrows. And all that flow comes to the treatment plant into a big building where there's screens to grab all the non-flushables, things that we're not supposed to flush, we grab those. And also all the grit and sand that's in the system is drawn out at the headworks building. So right now, because the screens aren't working, we're getting the non-flushables, the baby wipes, the diapers, all the things we're not supposed to flush are coming into the plant, creating a problem downstream to the actual treatment process. The grit is wearing out the impellers of the pumps, and the grit's also wearing out the pipes. So because it's not working, it's antiquated, life expectancy, we need to replace it to start grabbing all the non-flushables once again.
And then the secondary clarifiers is at this stage of the treatment process here. And that's at the stage at which, after it's gone through, as Guy mentioned, pulling out your big stuff at the beginning, your rags, degritting. Now you've gone through a secondary treatment process to start reducing your nutrients. And this secondary clarification stage does what that term might imply is it allows your solids to settle the bottom so that the clearer and now treated from nutrients having been removed can proceed to the final stages of disinfection before it goes to the river.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Oops, all right. And so the 2 priority projects at the WPCF, since that's where we're talking about, we'll continue with that one. We have the headworks, also called preliminary treatment. Those terms can be interchangeable. And it's a condition upgrade. You can see, as Guy mentioned, this is equipment at the headworks area. It's very corroded and rusted. The atmosphere is such that it's started to impact the equipment. So a full upgrade of this headworks building, of new screening equipment to remove the screen so it doesn't clog things downstream, new grit equipment to remove the grit so it's not settling and then causing pump issues further downstream or settling further downstream. And so these are images just to show and illustrate the condition. And then the second priority project, the secondary clarifier upgrade. So while we mentioned that the headworks is the most heavily used portion of the facility and rehab is needed, the secondary clarifiers, they were built at a time where they're no longer designed to capacity. In essence, they are too short. And due to that, the lack of depth of these clarifiers leads them to failure, to points of failure, depending on conditions of the
I'll
facility.
explain just a little bit. So a clarifier, what it's purpose is when that the treated wastewater comes into that clarifier, there's a big arm, and all the solids settle down very slowly. If the clarifier is too shallow, those solids will not settle. They'll get pushed downstream. The next step after the clarifiers is denitrification filters, which are basically sand filters. If you have solid in the liquid that are entering the sand filters, it clogs that, and then they can't do their job. So if your clarifier does not have the depth and you get the resonance time for the settling, it's not doing its job. The solids are going right through.
And of course, yeah, and of course you want to remove the solids so that they don't impact the further downstream processes. And you can see here that rather than the surface being more liquid and clear, you can see a lot of solids have settled to the top.
Accumulated.
Accumulated to the top, yes. And you can see here, and this is a good example, recently a mechanism failed on the clarifier, so all of the solids are unable to be removed from the top, as should be under normal operation, as there's an arm mechanism on the surface that would rotate and remove it. So it's just a good illustration and visual of the sort of the condition, as well as the issue of capacity at that stage of the treatment process. So those are the two priority projects at the WPCF with regards to being able to handle not only treating and removing due to the condition issues up at the front of the plant, and then also the fact that the secondary clarifiers aren't designed to current design standards and are not always removing what they need to be sludge-wise that settles to the bottom. And then the third priority project, and we have Bob from Beta with us here. I don't know if you want to give a...
Sure. We actually have started at least what we consider phase one of the Swiss Beach low-pressure sewer project. We're going to be advertising within the next couple of weeks the Wankiko area, which is probably approximately 3/4 of the flow that goes to the Ruggles Street pump station. What we're looking for under this project is the remaining area in the Swiss Beach area, which consists of approximately 800 dwellings, which would remove approximately 220,000 gallons of inflow per year. Okay, right now, and that's what we're here for. And what this would do would allow us this capacity at the treatment plant.
One second, Bob. I want to clarify. Bob said 220,000 per year.
Oh, per day.
It's per day.
Per day, excuse me.
Per day. So approximately through inflow, which is sump pumps and drains and things of that sort, and infiltration caused by tidal influence or rain, 220,000 gallons per day is what we see.
So these three priority projects address a combination of the capacity issues and allowing flow into the facility, but also being able to treat that and being able to treat it properly and get it out to the river. And so that brings us to the cost discussion. So you can see up here on the tables, order of magnitude costs for the projects, the Swift Speech, which is again capacity, I&I, and putting to reduce, I&I in that area. And then the two preliminary treatment and secondary clarifier additions for the project. So the reason, and while these costs are not insignificant, of course, this is why we're coming to present to you today to talk about what are the funding mechanisms and why do we feel it's important and critical now to be addressing these issues. So we have a unique opportunity this year to take advantage of state funding that exists. So the state revolving fund is a fund that exists all the time. It's a 0 to 2%, a low interest loan program, and it's provided to nutrient management projects. So projects that are going to address removing nitrogen and nutrients from our estuaries and coastline to be, as well as other places, but applicable to this discussion. And then so not only is this loan a low interest loan opportunity, It also affords a level of principal forgiveness for certain communities in Massachusetts based on the state's listing of what they called disadvantaged communities based on tiers. And tiers 1, 2, and 3 have different levels of principal forgiveness for these loans that are applied for. And Wareham this year falls in tier 3, so which is at a 9.9% principal loan forgiveness. So not only do we have these opportunities, which are opportunities that come around. The unique thing about why we feel that this is important now is to take advantage of new monies, if you will, that are being provided. So the infrastructure bill that was passed is providing additional principal forgiveness. So while the state has not indicated the exact amount that they're providing, it's going to go to these disadvantaged community listing communities. So you don't just have 9.9% principal forgiveness, it's going to be something also on top of that. And also there are always, of course, grant opportunities to be pursued.
And one item was that we found, the same problems facing other towns, obviously, and what we're working with some of the other towns is with the release of the county ARPA funds, that those can be used towards wastewater projects. So that's something to keep in mind. There is a portal on the Plymouth County registry, I believe, where you can, I looked at it last night, and I want to say Wareham has about $1,071,000 available in the first quarter through the ARPA funds, through the county ARPA funds. And that's, we would receive that by filling out, there's an online portal application. It's a very brief 2-page application process, and I believe that that's been earmarked for wastewater, COVID relief, and I believe broadband, the 3 categories that the ARPA can fund.
And I believe up to 49, so of this infrastructure bill, additional funding that we haven't seen yet for this program that is new this year, you have an additional of up to 9% of the money that is being awarded to these communities in the southeast area to address these nutrient problems. 49% of that will be awarded to disadvantaged communities, is what the state is saying at this point. So again, while we don't know the amount, it's something above that 9.9% principal forgiveness, which is again very unique to this year and this opportunity. And so just to put into a framework sort of what that would mean for a loan for a project of this, or projects of this magnitude, you can see we've sort of itemized out based on your loan a 0%, a 2%, or 5%, which we're calling the what could be on the open market right now. And you can see that the cost of the loan itself of this $60 million compiled project could cost up to $92 million, depending on the loan that you're able to secure to deal with these issues. And then you can see how that money comes down with principal forgiveness. So in the open market, if these low interest loans aren't able to be taken advantage of, you can look at something up to $90 million, whereas if you're able to secure a 0 or 2% interest and have principal forgiveness, the cost of the project is much reduced down to the 50 to 67 million mark, as you can see. So it's a really, I feel, a good tool to look at to say, this is a unique opportunity where this project, even though these costs are not insignificant, this project at this opportunity is one of the cheapest that it could be.
And those numbers do not include the additional principal forgiveness among the 9.9.
Correct, yeah. But wanted to throw out some numbers so that you have something to look at and digest. And of course, it should be noted that the 0 to 2% loan, the reason there's that range is because to get the 0%, you have to comply with certain nutrient management criteria. So there's a list of criteria that the state provides that you have to do in order to get the 0%. However, no matter what you apply to, it's somewhere in that range, and they balance it all out. So as much as can be defended for this 0%, but it's anywhere in that range of 0 to 2%, and it gets compiled. So that's why we keep mentioning the 0 to 2% range. So that brings us to the proposed schedule. Just to give an idea of, this is a unique opportunity, but what does that mean for this year going forward? So the first step in this process for the state loan is to submit a project evaluation form. In essence, it's a letter, you filling out a form and submitting sort of letter and narrative that indicates this is the project and this is why we'd like to be put on a list to be eligible for this loan. And that is, and that doesn't require, that stage doesn't require appropriating any funds. However, at fall town meeting this year, design funds for that construction project would need to be appropriated, and then the critical next milestone is construction appropriation at spring 2023 meeting. And these are critical because if you don't appropriate in the spring, you fall off that cycle. So it's very critical, especially to take advantage of these extra monies that are being provided this year, that schedule is what is required to fit into the criteria for the state loan program. And so we've listed the rest of this, the remainder of the schedule to kind of give an idea of how all of that would play out in terms of then when you're submitting the actual SRF application, and then when the project would happen. And you'll notice here at the end that, you know, under this schedule, the time frame at which the repayment of the loan doesn't start happening until 2026. So while this is, you know, not insignificant funds, again, I have to reiterate the unique opportunity for the principal forgiveness and all the extra monies that are coming into this program, as well as you can see that you have time to build up for that repayment of the loan debt. And so the alternative of if we do nothing aren't great alternatives, unfortunately. There are many potential costs of no action and not continuing to address condition and capacity issues, possibilities of annual fines, and then loss of eligibility for the 0% financing for future projects. And then you still will be required to complete the wastewater project in essence. And of course, all of that, when it gets to that stage, there's unknown legal fees involved, and then you can lose access to certain other grant funding. So not moving forward with projects can often be a greater potential cost. And of course, it's not addressing the capacity issues, which continues to leave us in the moratorium where there aren't future connections being allowed, and you have this risk of no further economic growth with regards to that. But I would like to leave it on the unique opportunity of all the additional funding and monies that are uniquely available this year that we haven't seen in many, many decades for this kinds of work.
It's a lot to digest.
A lot, yeah.
Okay. I'll let you go first, Mr. Slavin, because I think you probably might have some of the same questions as you gentlemen, but go ahead.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Maybe. I'll get you some type of ruling on the Makepeace, just so you know. But they did file not to go forward.
Mr. Slavin, I contacted and met with Jim Kane on the very question. I'm looking for a document that's saying as such, and he said he's given up no rights. They've changed in direction right now, but he's not giving up rights.
It doesn't matter, Guy, what
that's all I'm
Mr.
saying.
Kane gives up or not. The idea is if they're not developing the area, therefore there's no rights.
That's right. There's no economic benefit at this time, but if there's one 5 years down the road, they'll move forward. That's all I'm
Correct.
saying.
Okay, here we go, folks. Since we have, I believe, at least 3 members of the sewer commissioners here, people have to realize that the Board of Selectmen back in 2010 no longer had anything to do with the sewer, process, et cetera. It was taken away during that town meeting. Number 1 on this list here is, I'm going to ask if one of the sewer commissioners would like to comment. Has this been discussed and voted on by the sewer commissioners yet?
Excuse me.
It's appropriate because we're,
You need to ask that through me, right? You need to ask that through me.
okay, then I'll ask it through you.
Okay. Is there anyone here from the sewer commissioners who'd like to speak to the issue of the moratorium specifically?
Not the moratorium, the actual project.
Actual
yeah.
projects. Okay, I see none. Go ahead.
Okay, so my concern is whether or not they've done that so far, or whether this is a request but not coming from the sewer commissioners yet. The other piece of all this basically is that we've been banging away at this for well over 10 years. It's gone from being proactive to being reactive now, which is the worst way to do things. There is a project that Mr. Campino, myself, I think Jim Gilberti, who's the chair of the sewer commissioners, we've been meeting with the Buzzards Bay Coalition for quite a while on the project that basically takes and puts a project going down back to the canal, which the Maritime Academy has, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, 9.5 million gallon discharge. which is-
3.5 million gallons a day. And we were with the Department of Transportation, looking to directional drill under the railroad to get there. And we had.
I understand, Ms. Campino, I'm not asking that.
No, what I'm saying is that
It's
we've been
okay.
stopped. We've
Just-
been stopped.
Let me finish,
Sorry.
please.
I'm sorry.
My understanding is this 9.5 million was the original allotment for the Maritime Academy, what their permit is, if they wanted to use it. We'll disagree.
It's 77,000 gallons per day is what their permit is.
77,000 gallons per day from
Now,
Maritime.
basically, well, that's the total. I'm talking about the total they're allowed.
77,000.
On
Now-
their current,
On their current permit that discharges to the canal, they're allowed to, just like Wareham's allowed 1.56, they're
We're
allowed 77.
not talking about the current permit, we're talking about the one they still hold they haven't used. There's another permit. They still have a permit that's not been activated or anything. Now, my concern here is that particular project, where are we with that as far as what happens here? That particular,
I'm gonna jump in here. We are not here to cross-examine the sewer commissioners. This was a presentation to explain the moratorium and how they got there, as well as the other capital outlays that they may be looking at. While we may have some concerns, it's very clear on the agenda that is discussion of hookup moratorium with members of the sewer commissioners and the consultants. I don't believe that your board called a meeting, the sewer commissioners, so that you're really not in session. You're simply members of the audience. It would be improper for you to answer at this particular point. So I'm gonna ask you to change your direction of questioning a little bit, please.
not a problem.
Thank you.
My concern is that this particular project, as it's listed now, is this really going to solve the issue that we have?
Well, what is, the issue is?
Well, the issue,
Yeah.
Guy, please, this issue is simply that with doing this and the idea, with the idea of having to be able to lift the moratorium, or this is just strictly to fix something which will not do anything economically for the town?
Both.
Guy, please.
Well, you're asking
Wait,
questions.
I am
Excuse me.
asking these people to
Oh, I
see a
didn't hear you address
project.
them. I apologize. I just
Thank
don't
you.
know the question.
Gentlemen and ladies, through me or okay?
I don't want,
I understand.
I don't want to be interrupted while I'm speaking.
I understand, neither do I.
Thank you.
I believe there's a question.
That's my
And what is the
question.
question?
My question was simply, will this project, what is this project going to do for the town?
Sure.
Is it going to
Thank you.
fix things? Is it going to eliminate the
The
moratorium? et
question
cetera?
is, what is this going to do for the town? Thank you.
It's going to result in much-needed capacity through the I&I upgrades of Swift Speech, estimated between 1 and 200,000 gallons per day. So once we do that 20 million project in Swift Speech, that's what we're projecting, between 100 and 200,000 gallons per day of I&I that will not be going to the plant. So we can now allow approximately 100 to 200,000 of future customers that want to come and connect to the system. So it's going to give us some relief in the short term for the capacity issue, and then it's also going to repair the antiquated processes of the treatment facility. And you asked a question earlier, I'm not sure if I can answer it or not, but just regarding the other project that we're working on, so.
That's not you.
Okay. One of the other assignments, and this ties into directly what we're doing, is that GHD has been asked to prepare the town's comprehensive wastewater management plan. Sarah mentioned earlier that to be eligible for a 0% loan, there's some criteria. There's 5 criteria. One of the criteria is that the town has an adopted CWMP, a comprehensive wastewater management plan. They last approximately 20 years. The last one was done in is it 2001?
2002 ends 2002, yes.
2002, so we're up that 20-year period, we're moving forward, we're doing that. That that project is going to outline all the recommendations moving forward. We know through the project with the coalition, looking at the outfall, that the plant needs the headworks, the clarifiers, regardless of what happens. And of course, we always design, call it thoughtful design. When we lay the plant out, we don't just lay it out for one additional clarifier and that's it. We always look at the future and say, you know, we may not be designing things, but is there space available? Can we add things to the piping network, like T's and flanges, that will make it very easy at a later date? It's called provisional design. We're expecting this to grow. So through that CWMP, it takes a very detailed look at what the town's future flows, what they come up with, and that's a process. We work very closely with the town to determine those future flows. We come up with a number. Right now, our limit is 1.56. If it's determined that the town of Wareham over the next 20, 30 years needs, let's say, 2.2 million gallons, we have 700,000 gallons that we now have to treat and discharge and put somewhere. The problem is we can't put any more in the river. So our options are we can pursue the canal, we can look at a property on the other side of Minot Road for a ground discharge, we can look in West Wareham at other sites, but that's part of this comprehensive wastewater management plan. And we update the board frequently. We say, okay, this is where we're at for our sites, pros, cons, what works, what doesn't. But there's a process to go through and identify all these future planning things. But what we're proposing at the plant, this isn't something that, 20 years from now, we're going to say, well, why did we do this? It wasn't built properly. We're going to design the plant provisionally, so whatever we do now will have to be impacted as least as possible in the future.
Okay, just since you brought it up, just a quick thing, and I won't get Mrs. Whiteside upset with me anymore. The comprehensive wastewater management plan, we've never completed our comprehensive wastewater management plan. And we haven't got from EPA, at least unless something's happened recently, a release from that, which has to do with the sewering of Agawam Beach, et cetera, in some of the areas in town. So when you discuss the comprehensive wastewater management plan, you're going to be proposing a new one. Are we allowed to move forward if we haven't completed the one that exists?
You are.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
All done.
Okay, I'm going to suggest that we not pursue questionings unless they have to do specifically with this presentation or with the question of the moratorium, which is what is posted on the agenda. So, and again, we are not discussing what or how the sewer commissioners have come to this decision. They are a separate legally elected board, and they are responsible for a specific job. If you have specific questions, I suggest you go to one of their meetings and ask the questions of them. This is not the appropriate venue, and this is an informational meeting, not a dialogue, and I just want to make that clear, okay? So, do you have questions about the presentation, either of you?
Not really about the presentation. My question's more or less just, do you guys have plans to, through Madam Chairman, do you guys have plans to let the public come tour the facility so they can see the stuff that needs
you,
repair
Madam
and
Chair.
stuff like that?
Yes, Mr.
Absolutely.
Campion.
We have an open door policy. You can give a call and we'll take you throughout the facility or anything you want to see at any time, and that is anybody in the public.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Campion. Is it all set?
That's it.
Mr. Bassett?
So, Madam Chair, are questions about the financing and the money of this presentation stuff that I can ask?
I'm sorry, say that again?
So part of the presentation talks about funding. Can I ask questions about funding?
You can ask questions about the proposed funding, but you shouldn't expect an answer because those are all projections based on today's market, and tomorrow's market probably will go up another 0.75%, so go ahead.
Which is fine.
Try it.
So I guess my first question, Madam Chair, because I don't know this number, but maybe someone on the sewer commission.
They
could
can't
you-
answer.
Okay.
These individuals here may.
Okay. How many maybe somebody on the board might know this question. How many homes do we have that currently discharge into our treatment facilities?
I believe there's 6,600 roughly connections.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, I mean, my biggest concern, I'm a big numbers guy and I'm a big financial guy, and just doing some quick looks at the numbers. Worst case scenario, it costs the town $383,000 a month in payments. Best case scenario, $225,000, based on going from the range of 0% to the current open market of 5%. Now, if I divide that by the number of homes that currently discharge and pay into sewer bills every year, I mean, you're talking about $750, $800 a year in payments coming directly from the homes, if that was a mode of repayment. And this is just for discussion and informational, just numbers, and I may be off with how it's going to be repaid, but it's a big number. And it's got to come from somewhere. I mean, I wish we all had magic buckets and trees that made money in our backyards, but unfortunately we don't. And part of my job and what I, ran when I was elected was to be a voice for the people of the town. And my voice for the people of the town is how much is this going to cost us as, contributing members and taxpayers in this town? What is it going to cost us at the end of the day? And maybe the answer isn't known, but I just want it to be out there that, where's it going to come from? The payment's got to come from somebody, and maybe there's a little bit of a reserve fund, but I don't see $92 million in a reserve that's going to pay this thing back. So that's my biggest concern is the numbers and where it's going to come from and who's going to pay for it.
Thank you. I'm going to, Mr. Campana, if you choose to answer one of your,
I just want to be real quick, because we have 6,000 connections. Some of those connections are multiple family homes. So the billing mechanism would be EDUs. So there's 9,500 EDUs. So if you just so it's between $300 and $400. So that just makes it a little clearer.
Just for clarification.
Yeah, just because I wanted to make sure you understood that. So there's more.
So we have 6,600 connections, but we have 95 multiple. So it's more
EDUs.
people paying, more EDUs, so less money.
Sir.
So which.
Sir. So I just wondered.
So for clarification, thank you for
Throw
that.
that out there.
I appreciate that. I'm just going off of what just the homes, but adding that to it, it brings the number down.
and I just want to point out that it is only the users. It is not spread across all of the taxpayers of the town of Wareham. So it is a specific user purchase and repayment.
Absolutely.
So, so from a financial perspective, that's my number one concern. And also, I mean, I know that this is, I've only newly elected to the board, but I know that this is obviously something that's been looked at, not just yesterday. It's been a while, and to reiterate, Selectman Slavin's point is it feels like maybe we're being a little more reactive than we were proactive, and I don't know what went into all of the research, and I can appreciate.
I'm going to caution you, again, we are here to discuss what is in front of us today. We are not rehashing ancient history, whether there is any or isn't any.
Okay, so I guess I'll cut my questions off there because I don't want to step somewhere I shouldn't. So
thank you.
That'll be enough.
Madam Chair, if I may suggest
Yep.
to the selectman, all the questions he has, you can come down the plant and we'll supply the information going back to 1991 of the original rate of sewer that was intended to be $500 a month, $500 a year that we didn't do. Anyways, the whole history, just so you can get an understanding. Okay. This may not be the forum, but we can provide all that so you can make up your own mind. You can see and see for yourself. So okay. I welcome you to do that.
Thank you, Mr.
Anyone
Campana.
engineers, same thing.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mr. Bowen, were you were either admonishing me or raising your hand? I'm not sure which.
Do I have to make a choice?
No.
You can do both. Let's go both.
Yeah.
All these questions are through you, Madam Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Just so I understand it, the Swift speech I&I would get you about 5%. efficiency?
Between 100 and 200,000 gallons per day. So I'm not sure, the 5%, how did you derive
That'd
that?
be out of the 1.56?
Yep.
Okay. And then the committed flow, but not actual flow, is about 8% of permitted capacity?
We didn't look at the percentages, but we do have a detailed list showing the existing and then what each of the individual commitments are and what the total is.
Okay. And if I understand the preliminary and secondary treatment improvements, that is just to maintain the efficiency of the current 1.56 permitting authority.
Yes, it would improve condition. It would, the secondary clarifier process, the second of the two projects, would also be able to increase capacity if more discharge was allowed to the river. So increasing the secondary process to handle.
Okay, so that's interesting. So it's not just simply to maintain the current functionality of the plant, but it's also to potentially increase capacity.
So the plant was, if I may, the plant was actually designed at 2 MGD. The original design drawings clearly state that on the plan, so it's a little unique. We have a plant that was designed to treat more, but our discharge is this. Most towns have a plant that designs X and discharges X. So we're looking at these things, and we have pursued that as discussions with the regulators about, hey, can we, if we do expand the sewer and take more nitrogen out, can we just put more in here?
What they're saying is not until you do these things.
It's correct. We would have to sewer additional areas so we can offset the nitrogen of putting more flow in there. But again, when we do these designs, we don't want to design a future clarifier for just what's on the committed list, right? We have to design that for what's coming down the pike ultimately in 20 or 30 years.
So you're going to go over, with your permission, Madam Chairman, so the idea of this plan that you'd submit would be to, I don't want to put the wrong connotation out, but basically over-design the improvements with the eye towards increasing capacity.
I don't know, is your mic on even?
Yeah,
Okay.
Close? I would say appropriately designed rather than over-design.
I think that's a better choice. Then maybe just one or two last ones, Madam Chairman. You know, the underpinnings of any moratorium are, number one, that there has to be a rational basis, which is perhaps a discussion for another time, although we've certainly heard a lot about it. But number two, how long would the moratorium last? What I got out of it, and I don't know if I drew proper conclusions, was that your action plan looked like the go-ahead on the project, assuming approvals, would be sometime in 2025, if that was correct. 2026. Well, that's just repayment.
That's just
I'm looking at
repayment.
notice to proceed. Okay, so June 2024, assuming ordinary construction, and I think this is the $64 question. At what point, assuming all this was approved by the voters, would the moratorium be able to end?
I would actually say if we proceed with the SWIFT, once that goes online, that will free up the capacity. That would be, if the goal was to free up capacity as quickly as possible, you can probably low-pressure sewer Swift Speech quicker than you could do upgrades at the plant.
That's where you get your 5 or 6% right off the bat.
Right.
Okay.
But given the condition, the current condition of headworks, clarifiers, and the fact that they're hamstringing the plant to properly treat the nutrients, again, they're too shallow, you can't have all the, they also need to be upgraded. There's a host of other problems at the plant downstream from those that are all derivative from non-performing headworks, clarifiers, et cetera. So it's,
But I guess, I'm asking this question because it's one that would be asked in court. If I'm just the guy who has been blessed with additional offspring and just wants to add a bedroom onto my house, when am I going to be able to go in and get a connection that would let me do that? And so I think the question, so would the Swift Speech I make that happen, or would we have to wait for the completion of the preliminary and secondary treatment upgrades?
That'd be the Swiss speech, I would assume. As far as a time frame, as far as the contract, probably would take approximately 1 year to complete the design for a project of that size. and the construction period would be anywhere from 1 to 2 years, construction seasons. So you're looking anywhere from 2 to 3 years from getting the approval or notice to proceed with the job.
Just one more, Madam Chairman.
Yep.
About 8% of the figure that you're using for flow to hit your 80% is committed flow rather than actual flow. I suppose we could argue about that, but
No,
how, I guess.
it's committed, you're right, it's not actually
Right.
coming. Yeah.
So,
those
but just
projects-
how, well, no, just let me finish up here. So how committed, and maybe this is where Guy
That's
will
right.
win, how committed is that 8% commitment?
Herein lies the challenge with it. So for example, we have these commitments. Town of Bourne has roughly another 100,000 gallons they can send per the moratorium. Woodland Cove, all these other projects we look at. They might be projected a year, 2, 3 in the future to pull that in, but if we let other non-committed flows come in, and we don't do these improvements, there will come a time when a Woodland Cove or someone else is gonna say, okay, we're ready to put the third phase, and we'll say, sorry, we already gave your flow to someone else, and then we either face a problem now or we face it very soon in the future if we start to grant flow for the committed flows. Every one of those projects are large-scale, Littleton Drive, Woodland Cove,
And I want to say, Madam Chairman, through you, Woodland Cove is active, Bay Point is active, you've got the trailer park is active, so the committed flows are active. We haven't seen the fruition of the total, but they're active. And Bourne's an unknown, they still have 100,000, and they're active because they're doing a lot of development. So it's hard to say that, we know they're doing them. What the final numbers are going to be, I can't give you, but I can't take away their commitment.
So the point that I would want to make there then would be that these commitments aren't some illusory figure. These are actual binding representations made to parties that are expecting to be able to connect to this
That's
system.
correct.
Yes.
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to say thank you, but I'm going to suggest, it's clear that there are a lot of questions about everything. And I know that Mr. Campana has made the offer to give a tour to anybody who wants to go down there, but I think maybe it's even more important, and I'm not asking and I'm not telling, but I'm suggesting maybe the sewer commissioners might like to have a public hearing workshop kind of thing, where you're the people running the meeting. This presentation gets made to the public. I think it's great that it was made here tonight, because I think many people will now have a whole lot of head scratching to do and questions. But I'm guessing that maybe Mr. Slavin would be happier and could get away with asking more questions in your meeting rather than in this meeting, because you, the sewer commissioners who are not here, and you are not in session, and I'm pointing that out, you are not in violation of the open meeting law because you have not spoken, nor raised your hand, nor participated in the meeting. So I think it would behoove all of you to make this information available to the public, to be able to answer the questions that have come up tonight, and go forth. Anybody else? Good, okay. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Okay,
Russ, when you get a chance sometime, call me.
I'm going to ask for a motion on 8F, which is the year-end budget transfers, which we were sent, please.
Okay.
You don't? I got it right here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you have your, everything that,
Probably not, but I'll come back at the next meeting.
okay, thank you.
I'll sell it back to you. Make a motion for it's a municipal leave transfer,
Both sides.
municipal maintenance transfer account to workman's compensation in the amount of $15,000.
There's
The
a-
explanation is remaining balance in the account is zero. Hazardous waste cleanup on June 22nd of 2022. We have estimated the cost out to the end of the fiscal year. A transfer is being requested from workman's compensation amount to cover the remaining year.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. You were given the information in your packet. Any further questions or discussions? All those in favor of making that transfer, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining? Mr., would you turn it over, because there's one on the back side, too? It's a
Oh,
front and
sorry.
back, yeah.
You didn't tell me that. Second one is the account name is FICA, amount of transfer to, I'll read the numbers off, sorry to confuse people. 1-000-9-190-2-0000-573-000-00, and the account transfer from 1-000-9-190-2-0000-573-000-00. The amount is $10,000. Explanation, remaining balance in the account is $63,850.62. There are weeks to still be posted for VEDA for fiscal year '22. We've estimated the cost out of the end of the fiscal year. A transfer is being requested from workman's compensation account to cover the remaining year. This is all from the new employees the school has hired. That's the motion.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. All those in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, and 400, unanimous. Thank you very much. The Eversource street parking is not on the agenda tonight. They were unable to send a representative. We do have, is anybody here for the dog hearing other than Mr. Buckminster? We will not be, what?
You're going to take care of Gary?
Yeah,
It's a long day. for
yeah,
him.
it is a long day. Then I'm going to go back and I am going to do the dog hearing, which is a continuation. May I have a motion, please, to open the hearing, which was continued from prior
So made.
date? Is there a second?
Second?
Thank you. All those in favor of reopening the hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, unanimous. The hearing is now open. Okay, I will, I have to do a roll call vote. To open the hearing, yeah?
Yes.
Open-
Yes.
Yes. Mr.
Yes.
Slavin? Yes. And myself, yes, for it, okay. Now we will read the complaint letter into the record. Mr. Buckminster, could you come forward, please?
Is Dean here for you also, Gary?
Unrelated matter.
Oh, never mind.
Yes, sir.
May I suggest
A procedural, yes.
a procedure?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is the dog owner present?
No, he is not. And the dog
No,
owner,
I know what we got in the mail, but you're not here, sir, Mr. Brunel? Not out in the hall? Could you check out in the hall, make sure Mr. Brunel isn't out now, Brunel? Oh, thank you very much, officer. So, Madam Chairman, the defendant has been called and hasn't responded. It's my understanding that you received correspondence from him earlier today, which suggested that he wouldn't be present, but which went on to state that the dog in question, if I can put it that way, has been relocated out of state and will never return to the jurisdiction of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. You can treat that how you want, but the fact of the matter is that the gentleman had notice. He sent this correspondence. The dog isn't within the borders of Wareham. So what do you do with that? My suggestion is that you allow Mr. Buckminster to give a summary report of what the offense was. If anyone wants to add something to that, you certainly could allow it. But I'm going to suggest that based on what Mr. Buckminster is likely to say to you, the response of the dog owner, that you're probably going to be entertaining a motion to order that the dog be destroyed, and that on the understanding that it's an order that you won't be able to enforce unless the dog ever reappeared in town.
That's a great suggestion. Unless any one of you objects to it, I will ask Mr. Buckminster to give us a summary of what is and what isn't.
Okay, it was a, this,
Mr. Bruno informed us yesterday that the dog was no longer in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. It was not today. Go ahead, Mr. Buckminster.
sorry, through you. This incident took place on 10/15/2021. Cheryl Gravette Dill was the animal control officer at the time that did the investigation, so I just have a summary of her report, and then I'll read through it.
Yes, go ahead.
I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and
Oh, yeah.
nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you, you may proceed.
On 10/15/2021, at 7:54 hours, I was dispatched to 20 Noshawn Road for the report of a dog bite. Dispatch advised the victim was bleeding profusely and the dog had been secured. Upon arrival, I spoke with the victim, Ernest Trox, date of birth, I'll leave out currently, and it appeared that he was bleeding from his left arm. The bleeding from the left arm was under control. Trox's arm was wrapped with several towels and elevated. Trox stated that he was walking his dog when the neighbor's dog came running at him from behind its fence. Trox stated that the dog knocked him down and then grabbed his left arm with his mouth, tearing the skin through the muscle down to the bone. Trox stated his neighbor Adam Bruno immediately ran to him and the dog from the backyard. Trox stated that Bruno immediately brought the dog in the house and returned with towels to help stop bleeding. I spoke with Mr. Bruno, who remained with Trox. Bruno stated that his 9-year-old American Bulldog was in the backyard, started barking, and ran out of the backyard towards the street. Bruno stated the dog knocked Mr. Trox down to the ground and then grabbed his arm. Mr. Bruno stated that he grabbed the dog and secured him in the house in his crate. Bruno stated that he doesn't understand why the dog went after Mr. Trox. He stated the dog has been obedient, trained, and has never behaved in this way before. Bruno stated that the dog is up to date on its vaccinations and his vet, Dr. Fall, at the animal clinic. Due to the severity of Mr. Trox's injuries, he was transported to St. Luke's Hospital by Wareham, Mass., and WDNR was notified, and Mr. Bruno was advised to quarantine his dog until given further instructions by the Wareham Department of Natural Resources. That was the report issued for Officer Jen Braley. Second report, the follow-up from Cheryl Gravette Dill. On October 15th, 2021, I, Wareham Animal Control Officer Gravette Dill, responded to 18 Noshawn Road for a reported dog attack. I was met by a man who identified himself as the owner of the dog, described as a 10-year-old male American Bulldog named Flash, who had attacked the neighbor, quote-unquote, Ernie. The dog owner, Adam Bruno, who was obviously distraught, he stated that his dog pushed through the fence and attempted to go after his neighbor's small dog, and when the owner reached down to protect his small dog, latched on to the man's arm, resulting in serious injury. The victim, Ernest Trox, was transported to Toby Hospital prior to my arrival. I served the 10-day quarantine order for the dog, and the dog owner agreed to muzzle the dog to keep the dog same on the leash at the same time. There are various injuries, pictures. He went through some severe surgery, some other, I think he had struck his head. There was quite a few injuries that took place. There were also some other reports or witnesses that gave in some other documentation, which I believe you all have from
Yes,
the
we do.
incident. So,
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we've heard from Mr. Buckminster. Mr. Bruno was, we sent a constable to serve him, and even though the notice was not actually served in hand, I have a statement from the constable as to what he did, which was in order to let Mr. Bruno know that he was supposed to be here, and that, okay, and that will be part of the record. So you all have a copy of everything that happened before. And I guess I would ask that do any of you have any questions of the Department of Natural Resources?
It's kind of a question for both Mr. Bowen and Mr. Buckminster.
Go ahead.
All right, so my question right now is, we're aware that the dog is out of town, out of state, out of our jurisdiction. How do we follow this to verify that it's true, and how do we make sure that this dog doesn't maul some kid down the road in another state?
Okay, so I'm going to ask that that question be held until we have closed the hearing, because that's not directly a question of the individual making the
My
complaint.
apologies.
That's okay. 6 of 1 happened, okay. Are there any other questions directly about the evidence that has been presented? Okay. I will call again for Mr. Adam Bruno. Would you step in the hallway and ask if Mr. Adam Bruno or his representative is here? Thank you very much. Then I will ask to have a motion to close the hearing, please.
Motion so made.
Is there a second?
Second?
And a roll call vote is required. Mr. Slavin?
Yes.
Mr. Chadwick?
Yes.
Mr. Bessie?
Yes.
Myself, yes. The hearing is now closed. Now, I will allow you to ask that question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
That's fine. Same question.
I won't ask Selectman Chadwick to repeat the question.
Excuse me, those of you who are using your telephones and stuff, texting, please either step out in the hallway or stop. Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I don't think I was texting.
You weren't.
Okay. So, it's a tough one. Because, we, supposedly this dog is in another state, and we don't exactly have the same authority that the federal government has to reach across state lines. So we're in a little bit of a pickle there. If you vote to issue an order, it's certainly that Mr. Buckminster's department will be aware of, the police department will be aware of, and if there was a report that the dog was in our jurisdiction, Mr. Buckminster's department would be within its rights to take appropriate action regarding the dog. In terms of being able to, and I don't mean to make it sound like I'm making light of it, but, pursuit of a fugitive dog, it's not going to happen. We can deal with it if the dog is in our borders. The gentleman has removed the dog beyond our reach, and all we can do is what we can do within our own borders and within our own power.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay. I will accept a motion to determine the disposition of the dog.
I would make a motion that we basically go ahead with it, basically I hate doing
The
this.
order to euthanize the dog?
Yeah, I hate doing this kind of stuff.
Is there a second
That's
to
what
that
it is.
motion?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to euthanize the dog. Is there any further discussion on the motion? I will go for a roll call vote. Mr. Slavin?
Yes.
Mr. Chadwick?
Yes.
Mr. Bessie?
Yes.
Myself, yes. I will write the letter tomorrow, get you a copy. The
Thank you.
police department will be given a copy, and we will serve it on all the appropriate parties.
Very good.
Thank you very much.
Thank
and
you.
I'm
You guys have a great night.
Sorry for taking your time.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you very much. I'm going to move to the discussion on the item 8E, and I'm going to say right now that this is a discussion about a request to write an RFP for the Deacon's building at 760 Main Street. I want people to understand that the disposition of the property known as the Deacon's School, Deacon's property, was awarded to the Board of Selectmen by a town meeting. And so I would ask for a motion to suggest or to direct where any RFP would be directed. And I also would say that it is probably premature to issue any RFP until we know what the disposition of the property would be. So I'll accept a motion.
So moved.
What was the motion?
To discuss possible RFPs for the Deacon's building.
Is there a second to that motion?
Sorry, could you repeat that again?
So what we were looking to do is our RFPs have been submitted to the town administrator. The town administrator does not have control of the Deacon's property.
Correct.
The town meeting vote gave the disposition, whatever, of the Deacon's property to the Board of Selectmen. So any entertaining of RFPs should come before this board, not before the town administrator. And I would suggest that until the October town meeting and whatever recommendations have been made, that it is premature to accept any RFPs or to issue any RFPs, because we have not, as a board, made a decision based on all of the information and facts. So let's try the motion again.
So made. You've already stated it out, so there's no reason for me to repeat it.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second to the motion. Any further discussion? Hearing none, then I will go for a vote. All those in favor of not issuing anything until the disposition or the town meeting report has been heard, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? It is unanimous. Thank you very much. Let's go back to item number B. Which would be to discard a policy that no longer complies with the law. The policy in question has to do with registration of sales agents and door-to-door salesmen. At one point, that was something that was done by the Board of Selectmen as well as the police department, and now under the law falls only under the police department. So we need to revoke and discard policy number 91-1. May I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to revoke the policy of 91-1.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to review and to discard the policy or revoke the policy. All those in favor say aye.
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 Abstaining. Just so the public knows, if you go door-to-door salesman, you need to go to the police department and they give you the appropriate paperwork. Okay? And let's see, can we get rid of anything else? I'm going to let you do your presentation, Mr. Chadwick. Item 8C is, ball is in your court.
Thank you. All right, so I'm currently looking to discuss the possibility of starting a new committee called the Community Youth Development Committee. And the mission statement is handed out in your packets, which I will read out. Is the purpose for this committee is to reach out to the community youth programs and nonprofit organizations to help guide them in permitting processes in the town of Wareham. Research state funding and grants, find private funding and grants through corporate entities, assist youth that are interested in town politics and research and learning about town governments and more. This committee will be appointed by the Board of Selectmen and will consist of 7 members, each serving for 3 years. The first appointments would stagger 2 years to expire 6/30/23, 2 to expire 6/30/24, and 3 to expire 6/3/25.
I'd ask you to sort of expand on why you think this is a necessary,
Okay.
committee or
So
group?
the reason I think this committee is needed in this town is firsthand I've noticed with the youth program that I'm involved with, there's a lot of obstacles that people are not aware of, and hard to figure out. And I think starting a volunteer committee like this could lead people in the right direction, make things a little bit easier for these groups in this town to help the youth, if that's makes sense there.
Either one of you have any questions of Mr. Chadwick on this?
I think it's a great idea. I think we underserve the seniors, we underserve the youth in this town. I have for a long time.
Into the mic.
Oh, sorry. I'll repeat, I think that we underserve both the youth and the seniors in this town, and for us to step up and try and get a committee together for this particular purpose is a great idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bessie?
I mean, it's great. I mean, my questions would be, one, finding people that would be willing to do that, and then, really having I don't want to say defining their roles and exactly what we would expect from the committee as far as, I know we've got the mission statement, but really defining what their role is going to be and how we keep that committee accountable to what they're supposed to be doing, to make sure that it's actually something that isn't, I don't want to say a wasted resource, but making sure that they're putting their best foot forward in an area in this town that is very important, because it is the future.
Can I go for, okay. We have a lot of people who would like to serve the town in many, many different avenues. To me, this covers something that is not readily available to youth groups. And I think it fills a gap. There are lots of people, and I can think of the Community Youth Empowerment Group, as well as others. Each one of the youth sports programs, I think, is a really great asset to the town, and certainly to the kids and the parents who belong to them. But this, I think, puts together, there's strength in the numbers and the desire to create a way to help organizations understand how to get permits, how to get the grants, how to go through that stuff. Not that any one of us is an expert, but I think putting the group together makes sense in terms of strength in numbers. That would be my cut at it. And Mr. Chadwick and I've had actually several conversations about this, because he wanted to know how to bring it forward. I'm not trying to answer for you.
No, you're right. That's basically it. It's, I think if we get 7 people who are from all over the community, that each one of them can bring someone that knows how to write grants, someone that knows how to do this stuff, that to find funds, all this stuff, they come together and they can start helping out all of the different programs in town, not only youth, but other nonprofit organizations, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, CYE, the DECA program. That's
I think it's
much what I'm looking
I think
for.
it's a great idea, but
I would think things even like Eastern Bank, Eastern Bank that we have in town is moved over and stuff, but especially Cape Cod 5. They're very active on the Cape side of doing things, and they haven't had the opportunity to really do the same things on, the other side of the bridge, which is our side. And we know the president of the bank and, other people, and we easily should be able to reach out and talk to them as well. They have programs that the bank does as well. And, I would think that they would be more than happy to help us.
Perfect.
And there's got to be a lot of parents that get involved with it, you do with the Tigers and other things, that this would be in their ballpark as well.
So I will entertain a motion to create this committee exactly as outlined in this, we'll call it a mission statement, and we would be putting it online, we'd be giving this to the press and hope that people would step forward. It doesn't mean that you have to be a youth, a parent, or, I mean, you could be a grandparent, you could be, you know, a retired, whatever, grant writer, that kind of thing. So it could, we're not saying that anybody, that it has to be somebody representing a youth group, it has to be somebody who is interested in representing youth groups.
Yep, it's looking for people that are interested in helping out the youth of this town, and helping the youth explore town politics, you know, in town government, more than you see that they are already doing with school.
Excellent. Is that your motion? Or was your motion to establish this, is that correct?
Yes.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Excellent. I will say all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? And what do you want to call it? 400. You want to call it Community Youth Development Committee?
I actually,
How about Youth Empowerment Committee?
well, you
Can't.
have,
We have CYE.
Yeah,
and
you
yeah,
got
CYA
that.
already has that. I actually, give me 2 seconds.
Yep.
Yeah, that's 2 seconds.
Okay, Eversource, I told you, is not on the agenda. And we do have a 48-hour business, unfortunately, so we need to take that up next.
That must be Dean.
Wareham Youth Advisory Committee.
Wareham
Youth.
Youth,
WIAC?
Wareham Youth. Again?
Wareham Youth Advisory Committee.
You don't want, you have to have another letter after that one.
Okay, great. We already did that. All those in favor say aye. Excellent. Okay, there is no town administrator's report.
No.
And we do have sets of minutes to approve,
Okay.
but I do have 48-hour business as well, and you all have copies of it. So go ahead, do the minutes first, please.
Okay, on the minutes, make a motion to accept the minutes of May 3rd, 2022. I was absent, but I did go ahead and review the minutes and everything else, and I have a form here that says that I've signed off on it as well. So I need a motion to go ahead and accept those minutes.
Motion.
Need a second?
In a second?
So,
Okay, not only did Mr. Slavin sign the certification, but Ms. Wertz did as well, so there are actually 3 of us who were either present at the meeting or have viewed the meeting online. All those in favor of accepting the minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstaining, unanimous. June 28th?
Okay. June 28th, make a motion to accept the minutes of 6/28. That was a short one. Let's see, we have, and
That's it.
Patricia was not there. The rest of us were.
second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the minutes of June 28th, 2022. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, it is unanimous. Okay. Under 48-hour business, we, as you know, have, because I sent you the copy of the email from Senator Pacheco's chief of staff, we have 3 bills pending before the legislature, and they all have to do with liquor licenses. And what they are asking us to do is to allow them to consolidate those 3 bills into one. So Senate Bill 2504 and 2506 would be included in Senate 2855. It just makes less paperwork. It's exactly the same requests that were approved by town meeting, so I would ask that you make, unless you have any questions.
Just one question. These are all let me get it closer. These are all pouring licenses?
Yes. Yes. One is a sale of all alcoholic. Yep.
Okay, and are these designated for specific locations by street and number, or just in general?
They are
Just so the public knows.
relative to the 3 overquota alcohol beverage license bills that have been filed by request of the town to be located in Wareham Village 1 zoning. The senator received 3 different articles for the filing of 3 bills, one for 5 licenses, which is 2855, one for, specifically for 56 Main Street, which is Senate Bill 2504,
Okay.
and the other for 176 Main Street, which is Senate Bill 2506. So we need to authorize the combining of the bills so that there would be one bill known as 2855, which would be recommended by the Committee on Consumer and Professional Licensure, which is before the Senate Committee on Bills and third reading. And these, the smaller number ones, 2504 and 2506, are still in
Readings?
readings, so that we can get them all together and done at the same time.
Oh,
Is that-
Madam Chair, just so, again, it's clear what these are, they're pouring licenses, but they're, 2 of them are specific addresses only, which means if for some reason if that address, all of a sudden the person or people who own that particular property decide no longer to be involved with alcohol, we cannot take that license and transfer it to a different location. They're location specific.
Right.
The
sure,
ones,
yeah.
the ones for Wareham Village are for Wareham Village, so they're specific to the village, but not for a particular address.
Correct.
So they can be transferred anywhere in the village if that was the case.
In the Wareham Village 1 zoning, which
So-
goes, yeah. So you made a motion?
Make a motion to go ahead and try and see if we can get this put together so we can basically make it simplified and get it done quicker.
I just need to write a letter to them that
Yes.
you authorized me to write a letter to ask the senator to combine.
So
the
made
bills.
as well.
I second.
Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Abstaining, it's unanimous. This will be on the agenda of the 26th as a confirmatory vote as required under the open meeting law.
We have
What do we have?
10.
Number 10? Liaison initiative reports. You really all look very tired. No. Liaison initiative reports. Mr. Bessie?
Negative.
Oh, yippee, Mr.
Done.
No.
Oh, thank you. Now,
Motion to adjourn, people.
Second.
not debatable. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, abstaining, thank you very much.